Okay, so we're gonna go through the last section of goal 6, which is gonna lead us into goal 7. Goal 7 is all about quadratic equations and graphs, and in this last lesson in goal 6, we're gonna start solving the most basic of quadratic equations. Okay, what is a quadratic equation? Well, to understand what a quadratic equation, we're gonna compare and contrast them with linear equations. Okay, so we got linear equations and quadratic equations. Linear equations are things like 4x plus 10 equals negative 22. Okay, 3 times x plus 4 equals 6 times x plus 8. Okay, so you've solved these things for years and you're familiar with how they work. We solve by using inverses, opposites. So if we have addition, we're subtracting. If we're subtracting, we're adding, multiplication, division, division, multiplication, etc. Okay? And you should remember that linear equations have usually one solution, but they can sometimes no solution or infinitely many. Okay, so that's linear equations. Quadratic equations, here's an example of a quadratic equation. X squared plus 3x equals 0. X squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. Okay, so linear equations, the degree, which remember degree means the highest power of the variable, is 1. For quadratic equations, the degree is 2. Okay, so instead of just having x or y, we're having x squared or y squared. Okay, solve by factoring. Okay, that's why we've been spending all that time on factoring. That's why we had 3 lessons on factoring, and you're going to see factoring other types a lot next year. Okay, so factoring is just one method. Okay, there's something called quadratic formula, completing the square, some of which you'll see in goal 7 and a lot of which you'll see next year. Number of solutions. Quadratic equations usually have 2 and sometimes 1 or none. Okay, we don't have the infinitely many solution case with quadratic equations like we can sometimes have with linear equations. Okay, so to solve a factorable quadratic equation, step 1, be sure that the right side is set equal to 0. Okay, the standard form of a quadratic equation is always set equal to 0. All right, we don't see that in linear equations. Okay, in goal 6, all the quadratic equations you're going to see, which is just this assignment, will be set equal to 0. In goal 7, we'll see ones that are not set equal to 0, where we'll have to just quickly change something. Okay, step 2, we want to factor the left side. Okay, we said we solve quadratic equations by factoring. And step 3, use the zero product property. Set each factor equal to 0. Okay, zero product property means if A times B, if two things are, if one thing times something equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. All right. So for example, let's say if A equals 8, so 8 times B equals 0, then B must be equal to 0. All right. In order to make, in other words, in order to make 0 when you're multiplying two things together, at least one of the things you multiply, one of the factors must be 0, okay? So the 0 product property, we're going to factor, and then we're going to set each of the factors equal to 0. Okay, let's take a look at an example. So 3x squared minus 12x equals 0. Okay. Step 1, be sure that the right side is equal to 0. It is, like I said in this lesson, they're all going to be set equal to 0. Step 2, we're going to factor. Okay, when trying to factor this, you should see this has a GCF. This has a GCF of 3, because 3 and 12 are both multiples of 3, and they each share an x, so the GCF is 3x. So we're going to pull out that GCF and open up one set of parentheses since we have a binomial and rebuild the equation, okay? So 3x times what makes x squared? That's going to be x. And 3x times what makes negative 12x? That's going to be a minus 4. Okay. So we factored the left side. Now we're going to use the 0 product property, setting each factor equal to 0. So what I'm going to do, one of my factors is 3x. We're going to go 3x equals 0. And then we're going to go the other factor, x minus 4 equals 0, and solve that little equation. Divide each side by 3. So x equals 0. And x equals 4. Okay? And again, like we said, quadratic equations usually have two solutions. Okay? Not always, but usually. All right. Number 2, y squared plus 13y plus 36 equals 0. Okay. Right side is set equals 0. Now we're going to factor. When factoring, you always want to check for a GCF first. The first two terms have y's. The last term does not, so there is no GCF. Okay? So now we're going to factor looking at the factors of 36. So 36 times 1, 18 times 2, 12 times 3, 9 times 4, and 6 times 6. Okay, we want the pair that adds to 13 and multiplies to 36, so that's going to be this one. Okay, and notice everything is positive, so our factors are both going to be positive. That's going to be y here or y here, plus 9 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so now that we factored, we use the 0 product property. Y plus 9 equals 0. Y equals negative 9. Y plus 4 equals 0. So y is negative 4. Okay. Number 3. Okay, number 3 does have a GCF. 2 and 18 both have a 2 in common, so the GCF is 2, and they also have an x in common. The GCF is 2x. We'll open up one set of parentheses. 2x times what makes 2x squared? We already have the 2, we need the x squared, so we're going to put an x in there. And then From 2x to make 18x, we need a plus 9. Okay, now we'll use the zero product property. 2x equals 0, x plus 9 equals 0. So x is 0, and x is negative 9. Okay. Number 4, x squared minus x minus 30 equals 0. You should see this one does not have a GCF. Again, easy way to tell. First two terms both have x's, the last term does not, so they don't all have something in common. So now we need factors of 30 that multiply negative 30, add to negative 1. So let's see, 30 times 1, that's not going to work. 15 and 2, nope. 10 and 3, nope. 6 and 5, yes. So an x here, an x there. So we needed to add to negative 1 and multiply negative 30. That means you need a negative 6 and a positive 5. Okay. Go x minus 6 equals 0. So x is 6. And x is negative 5.